Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named Project Prometheus Season 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins with Anna, a journalist for a major newspaper who was investigating a corrupt corporation when things took a dangerous turn. While covertly gathering evidence with her partner, they were discovered. Anna cursed under her breath as she jumped into her car and sped away. But while navigating a sharp turn, she lost control, sending both herself and the car tumbling down a slope. Luckily, Anna escaped with only minor injuries. But when she returned to the office with the incriminating evidence, her editor abruptly shut down the story, ordering her to drop the investigation. It seemed that the company had decided not to press charges for invasion of privacy, a small mercy. Furious, Anna confronted her editor, arguing that the press should never bow to outside pressure. But her protests fell on deaf ears. Determined not to let the truth be buried, Anna quit on the spot and resolved to continue the investigation on her own. Just as she stepped out of the office, a man in a tailored suit blocked her path. He claimed to have a case far more important than the corrupt company, 10 times more important, in fact. Intrigued, Anna agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. The man introduced himself as Shaposh, an agent working for a special services agency. In 1998, Flight 218 took off from the airport and vanished from radar just 24 minutes into the flight. No wreckage was found, no distress calls were made, and no ransom demands followed. The plane had seemingly disappeared into thin air, but yesterday a woman received a phone call from her father, a passenger on the missing flight. When police traced the call to a phone booth near a mountain valley, they didn't find the missing father, but they did discover the long-lost Flight 218, perfectly intact. The passengers, however, were nowhere to be found. Anna was skeptical, calling the story impossible, but Shaposh seemed to know a lot about her, and he had an offer. If Anna helped him solve this mystery, the agency would intervene and help her take down the corrupt company. More importantly, Shaposh revealed that the passenger list from Flight 218 had been written by none other than Anna's mother, who was now receiving treatment at a psychiatric hospital. Stunned into silence, Anna promised to consider the offer and give Shaposh an answer the next day. That evening, Anna researched the missing flight and found a wealth of speculation and conspiracy theories online. After a restless night, she visited her mother at the hospital. Her mother, however, ignored Anna's questions and continued to scribble strange symbols. Anna soon realized that the symbols matched markings found on the passenger list from Flight 218. She wondered if her mother's mental decline could be linked to the plane's disappearance. Anna immediately called Shaposh and accepted the job on the condition that she'd be allowed to recruit her own team and have full access to all case files. Shaposh agreed. First, Anna tracked down her old partner, Vadim, and offered him a substantial reward to join her. Reluctantly, he agreed. Next, she reached out to her friend Vicki, a university researcher with expertise in quantum mechanics. If the plane's disappearance wasn't caused by a supernatural event, time travel might be the only other explanation. Vicki was intrigued and promised to assist with any scientific analysis. Anna wasted no time and arranged to meet the woman who had received the mysterious phone call. The woman insisted it wasn't a hoax. The voice on the line was unmistakably her father's. He even mentioned private family details that no one else could possibly know, but he never explained the disappearance. He simply said he had just gotten off the plane and needed money for a ride home. After that, the line went dead. Anna's curiosity was fully ignited. She called Shaposh and told him she was ready to see the plane for herself. Shaposh acted swiftly, arranging a helicopter within hours. Even before they landed, they could see the massive aircraft resting on the grass below. The site was tightly secured by military personnel, with only investigative teams allowed to move freely within the perimeter. The military officer in charge reported that there were no signs of radiation or electromagnetic disturbances around the plane, but the situation inside was highly unusual. Shaposh had already secured clearance to go in. Anna and her team suited up in protective gear and entered the plane. What they saw made everyone's breath catch. Personal belongings were scattered across the seats, as if the passengers had simply vanished into thin air. Anna's mind raced with questions. She immediately called Vicki, the physics researcher, for help. This was beyond anything she could explain. How had the plane reappeared after vanishing for so many years? And where had the passengers gone? Anna floated theories about alien abduction or a rift in space-time. Intrigued, Vicki promised to wrap up her current work and join the investigation as soon as possible. Anna's instincts as a journalist kicked in. If they were going to solve this, they needed to start with the missing passengers. After comparing the passenger manifest with the items found on board, she quickly spotted an anomaly. 5 seats were listed as empty, yet personal belongings were clearly left behind on those seats. This meant that the 5 passengers had boarded the flight, but their names had been deliberately erased from the official record. Determined to find answers, Anna headed to the archive room and dug through the original flight records. She managed to recover the names of the 5 missing passengers. Unfortunately, the cockpit voice recordings from the flight had long since been taken by the military for analysis and wouldn't be returned for some time. Fortunately, Vicki soon arrived to join the team. Back at the plane, Anna read out the names of the 5 erased passengers, convinced that the key to the mystery lay with them. That night, the military delivered the recovered cockpit recordings from the flight's final moments. The data was severely corrupted from decades of storage and would require delicate restoration work. Still, they managed to piece together fragments of the audio. About 20 minutes into the flight, the captain reported violent turbulence, though the instruments showed no signs of disturbance. He ordered the passengers to fasten their seatbelts. Moments later, the plane began to plummet as both engines simultaneously shut down. The recording cut off abruptly. Minutes later, Flight 218 vanished from radar without a trace. Despite extensive search efforts involving the military, no wreckage was ever found. The more Anna learned, the stranger it all seemed. But if they wanted more answers, they'd have to wait until the damaged audio could be fully restored. With Shaposh's help, Anna soon obtained detailed records on the 5 erased passengers. A physics teacher with suspected ties to a terrorist organization. A tribal chief who had been in a coma for years in a military hospital. A renowned psychology expert with considerable influence in the academic world. A retired soldier now working as an engineer at an energy company. And finally, the most unusual case, Levy, a former archaeologist with a degree in physics. Levy had been confined to a psychiatric facility after allegedly demonstrating hypnotic abilities. He had previously lured 8 people to their deaths under the guise of religious enlightenment. Anna immediately suspected Levy. Shaposh arranged for them to visit the facility where Levy was being held. The attending doctor warned them not to engage Levy in conversation, as he could manipulate minds with disturbing ease. The doctor's grim tone made Anna's palms and butt sweat. But Levy was even more dangerous than they expected. En route to the facility, he regained consciousness despite being heavily sedated. The guards, sweating nervously, attempted to restrain him, but before they could react, Levy calmly hypnotized them and knocked them out cold. Meanwhile, Anna and Shaposh were still waiting for Levy to be brought in when, to their shock, he walked into the room on his own. It turned out that he had not been knocked out earlier, but had instead hypnotized the guards in the car. In a low, calm voice, Levy addressed Anna directly. He knew she was investigating Flight 218. To her surprise, he offered to take her to a place where she could find all the answers. Anna hesitated, but something about his gaze pulled her in. Almost unconsciously, she followed him out of the room and into a waiting ambulance. Moments later, Anna shook off the fog clouding her mind and regained control of herself. Levy smiled knowingly. He seemed to know exactly what had happened to Flight 218, and now he was ready to reveal the truth. At a gas station, Levy told Anna to wait while he stepped out and whispered a few words to a driver. To Anna's astonishment, the driver calmly handed over his car keys without hesitation. Anna watched, stunned by his hypnotism. After switching cars, they drove to an abandoned military base. Meanwhile, Shaposh, still at the hospital, realized something was wrong when Anna didn't return. He checked the hallway and found her phone tossed in a trash can. His gut told him that Anna had been abducted. Without wasting a moment, he gathered a team and set off in pursuit. Despite Levy switching vehicles to throw them off, Shaposh seemed to have guessed his destination and tracked them down effortlessly. By then, Levy had already led Anna deep into the base. He navigated the facility with unsettling familiarity, eventually opening a cabinet and retrieving a strange-looking suit. After putting it on, Levy was preparing to activate a machine when Shaposh arrived with the hospital's lead psychiatrist. From the platform above, the psychiatrist assumed Levy was having a psychotic episode and approached cautiously, intending to calm him down. But after just a few words, Levy's eyes flashed dangerously. The psychiatrist's expression went blank as he fell under Levy's influence. Without hesitation, he turned and leapt from the high platform. Shaposh shouted for Levy to stop whatever he was doing. Levy, calm as ever, replied that he needed to take Anna with him because the passengers on the plane were still waiting to be rescued. Without another word, he took Anna's hand and jumped from the platform. Nothing happened. If not for the safety harness attached to their suits, they would have plummeted to their deaths. Levy lost consciousness on impact and was rushed to an ambulance. Vicki, who had arrived moments later, was immediately drawn to Levy's suit. Despite its sleek design, it appeared to be a compact energy emitter. Some of its components were so advanced that even Vicki had never encountered them before. She decided to take the suit back to the lab for further study. Back at the hospital, Shaposh had gathered 3 of the 5 erased passengers. Aside from the comatose tribal chief, the others were present and ready for questioning. Anna initially suspected that they had been replaced by imposters, but during interrogation, a different story emerged. All of them remembered boarding the plane, but shortly after takeoff, they fell asleep like a pig. When they woke up, they were back in the airport terminal. Soon after, men in black suits appeared, led them into a sealed room, and had them sign strict non-disclosure agreements. Afterward, they were released with a hefty sum of money as compensation. Meanwhile, in the lab, Vicki discovered that Levy's suit was more than just advanced tech. It was essentially a miniature energy transmitter. Some of its internal parts were completely unfamiliar, suggesting alien or future technology. At the same time, Vadim, Anna's partner, was in the studio reviewing the newly restored flight recordings. A fresh section of dialogue had been recovered, but after listening to the audio, Vadim's face paled with horror. He immediately called Anna, warning her to be careful around Shaposh, because Shaposh's voice had been captured on the recording. Before Anna could process what that meant, a low, piercing frequency rang out through the hallway. Guards collapsed instantly, clutching their heads in pain. To Anna's shock, Shaposh stood at the far end of the corridor, wearing Levy's strange suit, which was now fully activated. Anna was tormented by the low-frequency sound waves, her head pounding as she hazily noticed that Shaposh remained completely unaffected. Fortunately, the strange noise disappeared as quickly as it had come. The people who had collapsed soon recovered, though their heads were still spinning. Anna initially suspected that Shaposh was behind it, but after questioning him, she learned that it was actually Vicki who had accidentally triggered a switch while researching the mysterious vest, causing a massive energy release. Even so, Shaposh remained a mystery. Why was he unaffected by the energy burst? To make matters worse, her partner Vadim had intercepted an audio recording from the missing plane. A voice in the recording was analyzed and confirmed without a doubt to be Shaposh's. With a grim expression, Shaposh finally revealed the truth. It turned out that passengers on the missing flight included not only his fiancée, but also his parents and friends. He had originally planned to travel with them, but just before boarding, he was called back for an emergency meeting. Shaposh swore he had never been on Flight 218, insisting that the voice in the recording wasn't his. 16 people who attended the meeting with him could vouch for his whereabouts at the time. After the meeting, Shaposh received news that the plane had gone missing. At first, he suspected that a military missile might have accidentally downed the flight. He pulled every string he could to investigate for years, but no solid leads ever emerged. Just when Shaposh was about to give up, the missing flight miraculously reappeared. This reignited his hope of finding his missing family and fiancé. However, the official investigation was slow and rigid, so Shaposh decided to take matters into his own hands. He sought out the passionate and sharp-witted Anna to help him. Anna and her team fell silent upon hearing Shaposh's story. They had never imagined that the seemingly carefree Shaposh had been carrying the weight of his family's disappearance for years. Anna suspected that the plane's disappearance was connected to that strange vest. The immense magnetic field it had generated felt powerful enough to tear a person apart. Vicki immediately perked up at the mention of this, thinking this was a miniature particle accelerator. While reviewing the flight's path, Vicki had discovered that the missing plane had flown over the Ustakan Fault, a tectonic fracture caused by crustal movement. This area was known for producing chaotic magnetic fields. It was possible that the plane had disappeared due to these disturbances. Vicki contacted his former mentor, a professor who had led an expedition to study the Ustakan Fault years ago. When Vicki explained that he wanted to collect data from the site, the professor agreed without hesitation. He even dusted off some old equipment from storage to assist with the mission. However, the terrain was rough. Ordinary off-road vehicles wouldn't stand a chance. Vicki simply smiled. Moments later, the team was airborne, traveling to the fault site by helicopter. Under the professor's guidance, Vicki and Vadim rappelled down into the fault. To protect their brains from magnetic interference, they wore specially designed shielding helmets. When they switched on their flashlights, both of them froze in place, wide-eyed. Strange carvings covered the rock walls. The professor, however, remained unfazed, saying that these carvings were over 1,000 years old. This cave was once home to an indigenous tribe. A geological shift over a century ago exposed it to the surface. Vicki marveled at the carvings while adjusting the instruments to begin collecting data. He had researched the fault before arriving. According to legend, this place was considered a nexus between the Earth's core and the universe. Though the theory lacked scientific proof, after the disappearance of Flight 218, the government altered flight paths to avoid the area. The professor nodded thoughtfully, saying that after all, science and mysticism often converge at the edges of understanding. Just then, Vadim interrupted their conversation, saying that they could not pick up any magnetic signals. Vicki expected that and pointed out a magnetic shift would only register if there was seismic activity. As soon as he finished speaking, the instruments emitted a faint buzzing sound. The metal lid on a nearby thermos began to tremble. Vadim leaned closer to inspect it, only for the lid to suddenly shoot off and fly across the room. Everyone's breath hitched. If the magnetic field was strong enough to cause that, it was no wonder the plane went down. After hearing this, Anna was lost in thought. She recalled something from Levy's files. He had studied spatial physics extensively and had even proposed that the human biofield could interact with certain particles in space. His theory had been widely dismissed as pseudoscience. Pushing aside her exhaustion, Anna continued sifting through mountains of reports. Early the next morning, she rushed to find Shaposh. In Levy's interrogation records, he had repeatedly mentioned Project Prometheus. Shaposh's expression darkened at the name. It turns out during the Cold War, the Soviet Union had secretly established numerous research facilities to study the supernatural. Project Prometheus had been one of the most ambitious programs focused on space-time research. Levy had been part of that project. Unfortunately, Shaposh hadn't held high enough clearance at the time to learn more about it. Anna suggested that Project Prometheus could be linked to the plane's disappearance. Shaposh immediately proposed searching the Bureau of Secrets archives for any surviving documentation. While Shaposh handled that, Anna tracked down Levy at the medical facility to press him for details about Project Prometheus. But Levy shook his head, saying he wasn't the one involved in the project. It was another Levy. Anna stared at him, confused. Levy explained that the strange vest had been given to him by this other Levy, who had claimed it could transport someone into another dimension to rescue the missing passengers. But Levy had no idea how it worked, hence the accident at the abandoned factory. That wasn't the only revelation. Levy also disclosed that Anna's mother had been part of Project Prometheus. However, she had voluntarily left the project after becoming pregnant with Anna. At that moment, Shaposh called Anna. He had found a cache of classified reports in the Bureau's archives. One report detailed the origins and purpose of Project Prometheus. He said they might finally have the answers. It's revealed that Soviet scientists once discovered a mysterious area in Siberia where time flowed 10 times faster than normal. In this region, ordinary bees could only survive for 3 days, while the lifespan of white mice was limited to just 6 months. To study this phenomenon, the Soviet Union launched Project Prometheus and built a large research facility within the area. However, after the Soviet Union collapsed, the project was abruptly terminated. Even more bizarre was the fact that Flight 218 had vanished directly over this research site. Upon learning this, Anna immediately proposed visiting the site. Shaposh, however, hesitated. That area had long since been acquired by a private corporation, and even he wasn't sure if they could gain access. Just then, Anna received a call from Vicki. He and his mentor had made a significant discovery while studying the mysterious vest. They found that injecting a powerful electric current into the vest caused spatial disturbances, one of the key signs of a potential dimensional shift. To test their theory, Vicki's mentor modified the vest into a metal box. He placed a key inside and activated the current. To their astonishment, the key vanished into thin air. They repeated the experiment over 10 times, but not all attempts succeeded. The old professor discovered that objects that failed to teleport had a unique bioelectric charge on their surface, similar to the positive and negative poles of a magnet. When positively charged, the object would be transported. When negatively charged, it would remain. This could explain why the passengers on Flight 218 had vanished. Those who remained behind might have possessed a specific bioelectric signature. To test this hypothesis, the professor suggested visiting the hospital to examine the tribal chief, one of the 5 surviving passengers who hadn't been transported. Meanwhile, Shaposh called Anna with good news. He had secured permission to visit the research site. The group split into 2 teams. Vicki, his mentor, and Vadim headed to the hospital, while Anna and Shaposh traveled to the abandoned research facility. The site had been purchased by a powerful conglomerate and converted into a perfume processing plant. The original research equipment had been dismantled and removed by government agencies. Shaposh and Anna searched every inch of the factory, but found no trace of the former research lab. However, when they reached the 3rd basement level, they stumbled upon a large, restricted area. A factory supervisor informed them that this section was undeveloped and strictly off-limits. Anna and Shaposh exchanged knowing glances. They were certain the factory was hiding something, but requesting a search warrant would likely alert the corporation and risk losing their lead. Things went more smoothly for Vicki's team. At the hospital, they quickly located the ailing tribal chief. Just as they were about to conduct tests, the tribal chief's granddaughter appeared. Vadim decided to be upfront and explain their purpose for visiting. The tribal girl's face darkened. Her grandfather had fallen into a coma shortly after the Flight 218 incident. Though he hadn't disappeared with the plane, he had become increasingly erratic after his return. His health declined rapidly, and despite extensive medical examinations, no cause was ever found. Occasionally, the tribal chief would regain consciousness and repeatedly mutter the same words. If someone comes to investigate the plane's disappearance, they must use the tribe's ritual to see the truth stored in his mind. But it will only work if 4 people are present. Anna was convinced the tribal chief knew the truth. She urged Shaposh to bring Levy and the other surviving passengers to the hospital for the ritual. However, during the transfer, one of the survivors, the retired soldier, panicked, believing he was about to be secretly executed. He seized a gun from an agent, triggering a firefight. Tragically, both the soldier and Levy were shot and killed in the chaos. Anna was dismayed by the loss, but to ensure the ritual could proceed, she and Vicki volunteered to fill the 2 missing positions. The tribal girl began preparing the ritual in the hospital room, carefully arranging the ceremonial symbols. She warned Anna to remain calm no matter what she saw. She cautioned that if she loses her way in the other world, she may never find her way back. As the tribal girl began chanting in a low, rhythmic tone, Anna felt herself growing drowsy. Her consciousness drifted. When she opened her eyes, she found herself standing in a strange, otherworldly space. A group of men and women stood frozen in place, dazed and unresponsive. Among them was the aged tribal chief. Back at the factory, deep in the 3rd basement level, workers pushed open a massive iron door. Behind it lay an intact, high-tech research facility. The truth was clear: research into dimensional fields had never stopped. Back to Anna, who had been pulled into another dimension through the tribe's ritual. She encountered the tribal chief, who shared a crucial revelation. The plane passengers were still alive. Anna wanted to ask more questions, but the ritual's time limit had run out. When she woke up, Anna shared her experience with the others. Learning that his loved ones were still alive, Shaposh finally felt a sense of relief. Meanwhile, the tribal chief's granddaughter was more intrigued by the nature of the mysterious place Anna had described. The tribe's elders called it the Edge of Hell. Anna nodded thoughtfully. The vision she had seen was both surreal and vividly real, like a projection imprinted on her mind. As they talked, the speedboat arrived at the center of Lake Baikal. According to old records, over 40 years ago, a similarly strange disappearance had occurred here. A fishing boat with 7 crew members had mysteriously vanished, causing a major stir at the time. Some villagers had witnessed a flash of bright light just before the boat sank into the lake. Rescuers searched for days but recovered nothing aside from fragments of the wreckage. No bodies were ever found. The old professor had reviewed the weather conditions at the time of the incident and found no record of storms or unusual activity in the area. The disappearance closely resembled that of Flight 218, but the 2 locations were worlds apart. Anna couldn't figure out the connection. As night fell, the group decided to set up camp by the lake. Just then, Anna received an urgent call from the hospital. Her mother's room had caught fire and she had been transferred to the ICU. Anna took the earliest flight the next morning and rushed to the hospital. After confirming that her mother's condition wasn't life-threatening, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, the incident had derailed her investigation at Lake Baikal. Something about the fire didn't sit right with Anna. Security cameras in the hospital had mysteriously malfunctioned, but footage from a neighboring mall revealed that the fire had been deliberately set. Alarmed, Anna immediately contacted Shaposh and shared her growing unease. Ever since she began investigating Flight 218's disappearance, she had sensed that someone was targeting her. Her instincts weren't wrong. The person behind the fire was none other than Fusky, the owner of the perfume factory. His goal was to distract Anna, and it was becoming increasingly clear that he was involved in the Flight 218 mystery. Determined to protect his secrets at all costs, Fusky instructed his wife to get close to the men in Anna's group by any means necessary. After leaving the hospital, Anna and Vadim decided to revisit the perfume factory. During their last visit, Anna had suspected there was a hidden area in the basement. This time, she intended to search thoroughly. They disguised themselves as workers and boarded the company's shuttle bus headed for the factory. Once inside, Anna discreetly set a fire beneath one of the seats. As the staff scrambled to contain the chaos, she and Vadim slipped into the factory's main building and made their way toward the hidden basement area they hadn't been able to explore last time. After navigating several corridors, they They reached the underground section. The two decided to split up to cover more ground. Anna soon discovered a massive machine. She pulled out her phone to take a picture, but a security guard spotted her before she could hit the shutter. Anna froze, realizing she couldn't outrun him. Vadim, who was hiding nearby, prepared to intervene, but Anna shot him a sharp glance, signaling him to stand down. Anna was escorted to the security office. She immediately claimed to be a journalist, but the head of security wasn't buying it. Realizing that the factory staff were completely cold and unyielding, Anna began searching for an opportunity to escape. But before she could make a move, someone struck her from behind and she blacked out. When Anna regained consciousness, she found herself tied to a bed. A nurse stood over her, methodically injecting something into her arm. Pain shot through her head and her senses blurred. Through the haze, she had the distinct feeling that someone was conducting an experiment in the basement below. Suddenly, the door burst open. Shaposh stormed in with several agents. It turned out that Vadim had followed Anna's silent instructions, slipping out of the factory to alert Shaposh. Shaposh had wasted no time. He stormed the factory without waiting for a warrant. The factory's manager arrived moments later, his face dark with rage. He demanded an explanation for the intrusion. Anna, still groggy but recovering, sat up and pointed toward the underground section, demanding to know what exactly that machine was for. The manager's demeanor instantly softened as he explained that the machine was used to extract perfume. He claimed that the delicate environmental requirements were why they hadn't shown it to Anna and Vadim before. But such an excuse wasn't going to fool Anna and the others. Just as tensions were about to boil over, Fusky's secretary arrived, attempting to defuse the situation by citing trade secrets. She proposed that if Anna and her team left quietly, they could all pretend nothing had happened. Shaposh was about to refuse when he suddenly received a call from his superiors. The person on the other end was furious, ordering him to leave immediately. Left with no choice, Shaposh gathered the team and withdrew from the factory. Back at the lab, Vicki had good news. The modified vest-like device wasn't just capable of transporting metal, it could now transport living creatures as well. To demonstrate, he placed a smartphone and a white mouse inside the device. When he activated the switch, a flash of white light filled the room. The phone remained in place, but the mouse had vanished without a trace. Vicki confidently stated that the disappearance of Flight 218's passengers was likely caused by a similar device. Anna immediately thought of the massive machine in the perfume factory. She wondered if it could be that the plane had passed over the factory just as they were conducting a spatial experiment with the machine. Vicki agreed that it was highly possible. He theorized that the 5 surviving passengers had unique bioelectric fields, which might have created stable anchor points during the spatial transfer. This combination of rare circumstances could explain the mysterious fate of Flight 218. As they discussed the implications, Vadim, feeling thirsty, went to get some water. He suddenly noticed something strange at the end of the hallway. When he opened the door, a crack radiating intense light appeared before him. Though the light faded quickly, the structural damage it left behind was undeniable. Vicki offered a professional explanation. The energy from their lab experiments had likely leaked, tearing open a spatial rift. He suggested that the missing plane and fishing boat might have been caught in similar rifts. Just then, Shaposh arrived with alarming news. A 6-story residential building on the outskirts of the city had been sliced in half by an unknown force, with the top portion vanishing into thin air. The incident had happened just 2 days ago, the same time Anna had seen someone activating the machine at the perfume factory. Could this disaster be the result of another spatial experiment gone wrong? To confirm their suspicions, Anna and the team rushed to the scene. The lead investigator reported that 75 people were missing. The military had already sealed off the area to prevent public panic. Fortunately, there was one survivor, a woman who had been injured but not taken away. Anna hurried to the hospital where she found the woman lying in bed, her left arm missing. A chill ran down Anna's spine to her smelly butt as she listened to the woman's account. The woman had sensed something was wrong a week before the incident. Birds had started fleeing the area without reason, and crows had gathered in large flocks overhead. The residents also reported unexplained dizziness and headaches. Then, 2 days ago, a blinding white light suddenly flashed across the sky. Terrified, the woman had ducked into her house. When she bent down to pick up the remote control, she felt a sharp pain in her arm. When she regained consciousness, her arm was gone. If she had been standing just a few inches to the side, her entire body might have been torn apart. Anna was now certain that the building disaster was linked to the spatial experiments. Meanwhile, Vicki and the team were collecting magnetic field data at the site. Upon examining the damaged building, they noticed that the edges looked like they had been sliced cleanly by a razor-sharp blade. Once the data was analyzed, Vicki discovered that the magnetic field patterns were nearly identical to the ones produced by their lab's spatial rift experiments. This confirmed Anna's theory, but it also raised new questions. The site of the rift wasn't particularly close to the perfume factory. Did that mean the rifts were appearing randomly? And where had the missing residents gone? Determined to uncover the truth, Anna sought out the tribal chief's granddaughter and proposed conducting another tribal ritual. Once everything was prepared, the ritual began with soft chanting. Anna felt her vision blur, and the next moment, she found herself in the mysterious dimension once again. This time, she was better prepared and quickly located the tribal chief. She pressed him for answers, but time was once again too short. She only managed to extract fragments of the truth before being pulled back. When she woke up, Anna immediately asked the tribal girl to perform the ritual again, but the tribal girl refused. She warned that repeating the ritual too many times could cause permanent brain damage. Reluctantly, Anna backed down. Still, she shared the newly acquired information with Vicki, determined to piece together the puzzle before the next disaster struck. The tribal chief revealed that the spatial rift was caused by the machine inside the perfume factory. He warned that the factory's owner, Fusky, was executing an ambitious plan that could lead to spatial instability, potentially affecting the entire world. Meanwhile, Fusky had learned from his assistant that Anna's experiment could transport living creatures. His face immediately twisted in anger. Despite having state-of-the-art equipment and top-tier researchers, his team had only managed to transport metallic objects. Fusky suspected that the key lay in the mysterious vest. True to form, Vicki didn't disappoint. He placed a white mouse into the modified vest's iron box and activated the switch. This time, however, the mouse didn't disappear. When Vadim picked it up, the mouse bit him. Vicki was visibly stunned. He had deliberately filed down the mouse's teeth before the experiment, but now it had grown 3 new teeth. Judging by its condition, it seemed as though at least 10 days had passed for the mouse, even though only a few moments had passed for them. Vicki immediately reported the findings to Anna. The modified vest's box wasn't just capable of spatial transfer, it could alter the flow of time. He theorized that the mouse existed simultaneously in 2 different planes, much like how a beam of light both reflects off glass and passes through it. This led him to conclude that the experimental rift was a passage connecting 2 parallel worlds. Just as Vicki was preparing to conduct further tests, a car screeched to a halt outside the lab. A man jumped out and, without a word, shot the guards dead. It was clear that Fusky had sent people to steal the vest. Vicki was deep in his experiment when gunshots erupted outside. He immediately realized someone had come to steal their research. Acting quickly, he gathered his equipment and slipped out the back door with Vadim. They hadn't gotten far before a group of men in black, lying in wait, blocked their path. The squad leader smugly snatched the briefcase from Vicki's hands, only to find a fire extinguisher inside. It turned out Vicki and Vadim were just bait. The real experimental device had already been transferred to a safe location by the old professor. Embarrassed and enraged, the squad leader aimed his gun at them, prepared to finish the job. Suddenly, a bright light cut through the darkness. Seizing the moment, Vicki grabbed one of the men in black as a hostage, triggering a tense standoff. At that moment, Fusky himself stepped out of the shadows. He calmly instructed Vicki to lower his weapon, suggesting that they could resolve things peacefully through conversation. By the time Shaposh and his team arrived at the lab, it was already deserted. Bloodstains on the floor confirmed that a struggle had taken place, but there were no bodies, meaning Vicki and Vadim were likely still alive. Anna was furious. She had warned Shaposh that their team was being watched, but her concerns had been ignored, leading to this mess. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a call from Fusky himself. He informed her that Vicki and Vadim were in his custody. If she wanted to save them, she'd have to come to the perfume factory alone. Anna suspected it was a trap, but she had no choice. When she arrived at the factory, she was surprised by the warm welcome. The factory manager was already waiting at the door, smiling broadly and acting far too friendly. Fusky's hospitality was even more surprising. He admitted outright that he was conducting spatial experiments. If Anna was willing to listen, he'd tell her everything. Intrigued, Anna followed him into a secret conference room. What Fusky revealed next was shocking. He and Shaposh were not from this world. They both came from a parallel universe. Anna immediately recalled how Shaposh had been unaffected by the vest's magnetic field, and Fusky's words suddenly made sense. She listened as Fusky recounted his past. Years ago, his team had been working on space-time travel technology, but they had made little progress. During the ill-fated Prometheus project, Fusky and Shaposh had only been project coordinators. The real technical mastermind was the late Levy, who had accidentally opened a spatial passageway in the lab. The mysterious vest was a gift from another version of Levy from the parallel world. Technology in that parallel world was far more advanced than anything in Anna's world. While the identities of the people were essentially the same, their technological capabilities were on an entirely different level. In the parallel world, Shaposh was also a powerful investigator. A tragic car accident had claimed the lives of his wife and child. Devastated and consumed by grief, Shaposh turned his attention to the Prometheus project. Secretly, he crossed into Anna's world, intending to bring his wife and child from her reality back to his own. However, strict laws of balance govern the flow between parallel worlds. Any exchange of matter between them could trigger catastrophic spatial instability. To prevent Shaposh from acting recklessly, Fusky followed him to this world. Neither of them anticipated that the collapse of the Soviet Union would force the Prometheus project to shut down, cutting off their way home. For years, they had been secretly researching spatial technology, but progress stalled after their chief engineer, Levy, suffered a mental breakdown. The disaster involving Flight 218 was the result of one such failed experiment. The previous Lake Baikal shipwreck and the recent building collapse were also tied to the same experiments. Fusky urged Anna's team to figure out the experimental process as soon as possible. If they could succeed, Fusky might finally be able to return to his own world. Anna's eyes were full of suspicion. Clearly, she wasn't ready to take Fusky's words at face value. While they were talking, Fusky's assistant took Vadim to the infirmary to treat his injury. Before long, the two were passionately entangled using their muscles. Vadim thought he'd struck gold, but what he didn't know was that the assistant was actually Fusky's wife. Despite appearing young, his wife was over 60 years old. Fusky had brought a stem cell technology from the parallel world that allowed her to maintain a youthful appearance indefinitely. This was why she was willing to follow Fusky's orders, even going so far as to infiltrate Anna's team. While Vadim and Fusky's wife were practicing hormone yoga, Fusky took Anna to a laboratory. He revealed that a few days ago, he had struck a deal with Shaposh. In exchange for Levy's notes, Fusky had secured the release of the surviving passengers from Flight 218. The notes, which detailed the entry points into the parallel universe, would be invaluable to Vicki's research. Meanwhile, Fusky planned to use the survivors to recreate the circumstances surrounding the flight's disappearance. Fusky then handed Anna a report. It contained detailed cellular data about her and her mother. To Anna's shock, the test results were identical. A chilling sense of dread crept over her. She felt as though her fate was being controlled by some unseen force. In the adjoining room, Anna finally reunited with her captured teammates. Though they looked a little worse for wear, they were otherwise unharmed. Back in town, Shaposh was stunned when he heard that Fusky had released Anna's teammates so easily. Shaposh wondered since when Fusky was so cooperative. Despite his suspicion, Shaposh handed Levy's notes to Vicki, hoping he could quickly decipher the mechanics behind the experiment. Anna's heart sank. This was proof that Fusky had been telling the truth all along. Shaposh seemed to sense that something was off as well. He requested a private meeting with Fusky. The two had once been friends and colleagues, but now their ideologies couldn't have been more different. Shaposh had spent decades in this world and had grown to appreciate its quiet, mundane rhythm. He was content to grow old here, as long as he could reunite with his wife and child. Fusky, however, was the opposite. He was willing to destroy the world itself to achieve his goal. Shaposh tried to persuade Fusky to abandon his dangerous ambitions, but just like the last few times, the conversation ended in failure. Meanwhile, Anna sensed that trouble was brewing. She decided to relocate her team to continue their research elsewhere, but just as they were preparing to leave, the town was suddenly sealed off by soldiers. The military claimed that a flu outbreak was the reason for the lockdown, but Anna knew better. Fusky had leveraged his connections with the military to cut off all their escape routes. Trapped, Anna and her team had no choice but to hide out in a hotel. That night, Shaposh came to see Anna. He guessed that she had already figured out most of the truth and decided it was time to come clean. He admitted that Fusky had been telling the truth. Shaposh really did intend to use the technology to bring his wife and child from the parallel universe into this one. But what Shaposh said next shocked Anna even more. It wasn't Fusky who had opposed the Prometheus project in the beginning. It was Shaposh himself. During the first spatial experiment, they had accidentally torn open a rift, which caused two trains to collide. Hundreds of people lost their lives. Shaposh had proposed shutting down the project, but Fusky had argued that the technology could change the fate of their country. In the end, Fusky won the support of the committee, and Shaposh was forced to compromise. In reality, Fusky's persistence wasn't for the sake of the country. It was driven by a hidden conspiracy. When Shaposh attempted to investigate the truth, he was abruptly removed from the project without explanation and cut off from all experimental data. This was why he had approached Anna to investigate the downed flight in the first place. After hearing Shaposh's explanation, Anna finally understood the full picture, but despite the clarity, she remained skeptical. Just as they were talking, a group of mysterious assailants suddenly stormed the hotel. Shaposh's reflexes kicked in at the sound of gunfire. He grabbed Anna, intending to escape, but they ran straight into an ambush in the hallway. A fierce shootout erupted. Amid the chaos, Shaposh was struck by a bullet. One of the attackers moved toward Anna, ready to finish her off, but was stopped by a companion. Their mission was already accomplished. There was no need to escalate things further. As the assassins withdrew, Shaposh lay on the ground, barely clinging to life. In his final moments, he whispered something strange to Anna, saying that they couldn't change anything. Ordinarily, the death of an official of Shaposh's rank would have made major headlines, but the police treated the case with unsettling indifference. It was clear that Fusky's influence ran deep. What troubled Anna even more was that the researcher Vicki had also been taken by the assassins. Anna decided to confront Fusky again, but this time his attitude was noticeably colder. The reason was simple. The two most valuable assets in Anna's team were Vicki and the experimental equipment. Now that both were in Fusky's hands, he no longer had to play nice. Anna warned him that Vicki wouldn't give in easily, and that if pushed too far, she could expose Fusky's brutal methods of human experimentation. Fusky slammed his hand on the table, his eyes flashing with menace. He reminded Anna that the only reason she was still alive was because of his generosity. Sensing that the situation was spiraling out of control, Vadim quickly pulled Anna out of the room. On the way back, Vadim suggested exposing Fusky's crimes online, but Anna shook her head, looking disheartened. Shaposh had once told her that the Minister of Defense's son had leukemia, and that Fusky had used advanced technology from the parallel world to cure him. Now the two were practically joined at the hip. Reporting Fusky's actions would lead nowhere. Meanwhile, Fusky stood before a captured Vicki. Calm and composed, he told Vicki that the facility had the most advanced equipment and comprehensive data available. He invited Vicki to continue the spatial experiments. If the research succeeded, Vicki would go down in history as a legend in the field of physics. That final promise struck a nerve with Vicki. After reviewing the data, Vicki quickly pointed out the flaw in Fusky's plan. To achieve pinpoint spatial transmission using such a massive machine, the energy requirement would be on the scale of a nuclear bomb. Without blinking, Fusky nodded. He assured Vicki that any requirement could be met. Inside, Fusky was thrilled since his long-standing insane plan was finally within reach. Meanwhile, despite losing the experimental equipment and Vicki, Anna has not given up on her resolve to stop Fusky. She believes that the passengers on the downed flight may still be alive, and rescuing them is not only the tribal chief's final wish, but also a matter of her journalistic integrity. She realizes the key to breaking the case lies with Fusky's wife. Vadim shares a past with her, and from their brief relationship, he knows some important details. Her husband in this world has long since passed, and her relationship with Fusky is strictly professional. He provided her with the technology to stay youthful, while she helped him handle some unsavory business. As a result, she knows many of Fusky's secrets. Anna learns that there was more to the flight crash than initially thought. Shaposh had planned to send his wife and child to a parallel world, but the tribal chief, using his supernatural abilities, foresaw the conspiracy and boarded the plane to prevent the disaster. He tried to stop it, but overestimated his abilities. Though he avoided being transported, his health was severely compromised, leaving him bedridden and unable to act. The chief entrusted Anna with the task of saving the passengers. Anna felt the weight of this responsibility even more. She knew that if Fusky's space experiments continued, many innocent lives would be at risk. Even if successful, Fusky would return to his world, and his wife, without the stem cell technology, would age rapidly. She convinced the woman to join her cause, and together they infiltrated a perfume factory. With the woman's financial influence, she bribed the factory manager and successfully freed several of the surviving passengers. Soon after, she quietly helped release Vicki as well. It turned out that Vicki had only pretended to assist Fusky with the experiments as a delay tactic. Anna's mission was to rescue them from Fusky's clutches. Outside the factory, a getaway vehicle was waiting. If they could make it to the airport, they would escape Fusky's reach. But just as they boarded the plane, Fusky's men arrived. The woman realized the cover was blown and walked directly towards Fusky, facing her husband from another world with calm resolve. Fusky, expressionless, pulled out a gun and fired without hesitation, as if the lives lost meant nothing to him. Fortunately, Anna and the others were already aboard their private jet, which successfully took off. After a long night of travel, they arrived at a secluded villa in the Moscow countryside, the pre-arranged hideout. As they gathered to discuss how to expose Fusky's crimes, Anna realized just how deep Fusky's connections ran, particularly with the powerful Minister of Defense. As ordinary citizens, they had no real power to stand against him. Then, Vicki revealed a bombshell. Fusky's scientific project had failed to produce results. The issue wasn't with the experiments themselves, but with a vest that Levy had left behind. The vest contained an energy controller that could pinpoint space-time coordinates accurately. When Vicki left the lab, the controller was installed in a massive particle accelerator. All that was needed now was enough energy, and the experiment could succeed. Furthermore, while studying Levy's notes, Vicki theorized that the passengers' consciousnesses from Flight 218 were stuck in the space-time rift. Their bodies had been transported to another world, where the original consciousness had taken over. If Fusky activated his high-powered equipment, the rift could collapse, wiping out the 200 passengers and possibly destabilizing the space-time continuum across centuries. Hearing this, Anna made a firm decision. No matter what, she had to stop Fusky's space experiment. But they were a small group with limited resources. How could they possibly succeed? Anna thought of the tribal chief's mystical ritual, which could allow her consciousness to enter the rift. From there, she could use the rift as a gateway to the past, and if she could convince the chief engineer Levy to abandon the experiment, all their troubles would disappear. Despite his concerns, Vicki still had some doubts. Theoretically, traveling to the past should allow one to change the future, but there's another theory, that fate cannot be altered. The course of events is full of uncertainties, with each possibility creating a new parallel universe. However, the situation has already deteriorated beyond repair. Since science alone can't fix it, perhaps the tribal chief's ritual could work a miracle. Indeed, when science reaches its limits, theology might be the answer. Having made up her mind, Anna quickly organized the team for the tribal ritual. As the mysterious flames burned slowly, she felt her consciousness begin to fade. The next moment, she found herself in the space-time rift. Guided by the tribal chief, Anna successfully traveled to the day before the plane crash. In front of her were many familiar faces. They were the chief and 5 survivors, including Levy. But when Anna looked through the glass at her reflection, she was shocked to see her mother's image in the reflection. That's when she realized she was only experiencing a consciousness shift. No wonder her mother's name appeared on the passenger list. She too had been a survivor of the ill-fated flight. Just as Anna was about to board the plane, the figure of the villain, Shaposh, flashed by. Back in the real world, Vicki and the others were busy too. After investigating, they discovered that Fusky was assembling a particle accelerator in the basement of a nuclear power plant, likely planning to restart the experiment there. Vicki came up with an idea to use the principle of atomic collision to counteract the energy generated by the device. In simpler terms, they would use a nuclear explosion to fight a nuclear explosion. Vicki and his companion disguised themselves as workers and successfully infiltrated the plant. It didn't take long for him to configure the data on the nuclear reactor. Now, all they had to do was wait for Fusky to activate the equipment, and Vicki would initiate the atomic counteraction. His only worry was that if the plan succeeded, Anna might be trapped in the past and unable to return. Meanwhile, Flight 218 from the parallel world had successfully taken off. Anna couldn't wait to find Levy and directly warned him that what he was doing would disrupt the space-time continuum and cause both parallel universes to collapse. To strengthen her credibility, she revealed all the details of the operation, but Levy refused to listen. He simply walked into the restroom with his briefcase. Just as Anna was about to continue her persuasion, a man suddenly approached her and said someone wanted to meet her. Anna, curious, made her way to the first-class cabin, only to find none other than the familiar face of Shaposh. To her surprise, he wasn't alone. He told her that she couldn't change anything. Anna recalled the moment at the hotel when Shaposh had said something similar before his death, which suggests that this man might also be from the future. Shaposh explained that every choice made in the past creates a new parallel universe. Anna had tried many times to stop Levy from conducting the experiment on this very flight, but each attempt had ended in failure. The Flight 218 was destined to be transported to a parallel world, and her mother's mental breakdown was a result of having to endure the repeated experiences of Anna's consciousness. However, Anna couldn't fully trust Shaposh's words. His appearance surely had another purpose. Meanwhile, Levy in the restroom had already donned the mystical vest. Seeing that time was running out, he quietly activated the device. The next moment, the pilot noticed irregularities with the plane, and the tribal chief began chanting a spell, attempting to stop the event. As Anna felt the turbulence, it suddenly occurred to her that she had previously investigated the passenger list. Shaposh's name wasn't on it. This meant the man in front of her was merely a projection of thoughts. She waved her hand, and Shaposh and his companions vanished in an instant. Back in the real world, Vicki had finally seen Fusky activate the experimental equipment. As he prepared to initiate the atomic counteraction, Fusky and his men arrived. He had anticipated that Vicki knew the equipment well and had forced him to carry out the rest of the experiment. Vicki seized the opportunity to increase the power, using the overflowing energy to stun Fusky's men. Unfortunately, this still wasn't enough to stop the activation of the space-time device. Fusky had clearly been waiting for this moment. He watched as the space portal formed in front of him, knowing it was finally time to return to his world. Meanwhile, on the plane, Anna realized that she had still failed to prevent the rift from forming. She tried to convince Shaposh to let go of his obsession, telling him that even if he succeeded, it wouldn't bring back his wife and child. But Shaposh's obsession was terrifyingly strong, and he insisted on going down the same path no matter the cost. As the surrounding light grew stronger, the entire plane vanished into the space-time rift in an instant. Unfortunately, Anna still couldn't change the past. However, in another parallel world, Flight 218 successfully landed, and Shaposh was finally reunited with his wife and children. All the passengers returned to their original life paths. Anna, who hadn't boarded the plane, now had a happy and fulfilling family life. Her mother was not only mentally healthy, but also deeply in love with her father. Vicki, Vadim, and the others also had their own lives, with no intersection between them. It wasn't until one day that they were all brought into a secret meeting room. Shaposh pulled out a report, offering a generous reward, and invited the three of them to join the Prometheus project, which aimed to study supernatural forces. It seemed like the next round of space-time experiments was about to begin, just a few decades later than before. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.